According to my trusty, nope, one more minute. One more minute.
So they give us very good time.
Oh, yeah, I understand.
We're not as young and we don't. Like,
Yeah, we're not as young and we shouldn't be eating some of that stuff then too, right? At least I'm speaking for myself. Okay. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're beginning. Okay, everybody get settled? Okay. We're going to examine, it's a bit of a journey this morning. We're going to examine the origin and some of the messages of Tikiyat Shofar. Some of the messages that emerge from the origin and some of the messages that observe. Can't hear me? Okay, try it again. Is this better? Yeah. Okay. Some of the origin and the messages, or some of the messages of Tikiyat Shofar, of the shofar sounds. In order for us to go on this journey, however, you have to wipe the slate clean. You have to, anything you know already about Tikiyat Shofar, put it aside. Maybe it will apply, maybe it won't, but it's fascinating that we'll come to some very interesting ideas concerning the shofar. The Torah tells us that Yom Rosh Hashanah, the date of Rosh Hashanah, is a Yom Teruah and a Zichron Teruah. Those are two psukim, we will encounter them again later. That the day is a day of Teruah, and the day is a day of remembrance of Teruah. The rabbis ask, why is it one time a day and one time a remembrance? And the answer is, they say, the second occasion it's talking about when Rosh Hashanah occurs on Shabbat, when our Teruah is only a Zichron Teruah. The Torah does not define what it means by a Yom Teruah and a Zichron Teruah. There's no definition on the spot explaining what it means when it characterizes Rosh Hashanah as this day of Teruah. What is a day of Teruah? In order to understand, we actually have to go back to a very critical moment in Jewish history. And by the way, the Torah also doesn't define Rosh Hashanah. It's another shiur. But the fact is that we need to return to what I consider to be one of the most important moments in Jewish history, and that is the moment of our departure from Har Sinai. I've often said, maybe here as well, I don't remember, that the departure from Har Sinai is the single most important moment of revelation, because it defines and determines the impact and the meaning of all that came before. If we leave Har Sinai carrying with us the Torah and our loyalty to God's mitzvot, then revelation will have been an important event. If we leave, as the rabbis say, ketino kaboreach mibeit hasefer, if we leave like a child running away from school, which is what we did if you look at the Torah, unfortunately, then it won't, all that came before is a wonderful sound and light show, but it didn't accomplish its purpose. We're going to that moment, and we're going to the moment right before we leave. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives us a last commandment. This is the final commandment before we leave Har Sinai. What is that commandment? Look at the first page. Vayidaber Hashem el Moshe lemor, Asei lecha shtei katzrosos kesef mikshah taseh osam. Make for yourself 2 trumpets of silver, beaten silver. That's what it should be. And the Torah goes on to say how we are meant to use these trumpets. The Torah says that when you want to call the nation, the people together, first the elders together, you blow once. When you're tekiah, whatever a tekiah is, we don't know yet. When you want the nation to come, then you'll blow twice, or blow with 2 of them. And the Torah goes on to explain how these trumpets are to be used in that fashion. Now let me ask you a question. Why is the Torah telling us about these trumpets? They would seem to be, based on what I've just told you, utilitarian in nature, right? In other words, what I'm going to use to gather the people, to mark a war, to mark... I'm positive that there were other mechanisms in the desert that Moshe was to use to make the people move, to have the camp do what it needed to do. Why would HaKadosh Baruch Hu, as the last commandment before leaving Har Sinai, talk to us about these trumpets? So the answer is you have to take a look carefully. You have to look carefully at the text before you, and you have to split it up. Turn to the next page. I told you that one of the things they are used for is gathering the people and making the camp go. But the way in which they are to be sounded is case specific. Vatiku bahem v'noadu alecha kol ho'edel pesach ohel moed. You will sound a tekiah. All right, now what's a tekiah? It's the opposite of a truah. What's a truah? Onkelos explains a truah as a yivava, a broken, anguished sound, a cry. Right? So therefore, truah is broken, tekiah is solid. When I want to bring the nation together, the Nesiim, I blow one trumpet, but what do I blow? What do I sound? A tekiah. When I want the nation to begin to move, what do I sound? A tekiah, right? And I do it twice. First, the eastern part of the camp goes in the western. Uvahakil esa'am. I'm sorry. Go back. You should have corrected me. When we begin to journey, what do I sound? Uskatem trua. Twice. One for part of the camp and one for the second half of the camp. Uvahakil esa'kohol tiska uvalo tariu. And when you're bringing the nation together, what do you sound? Only a tekiah. Why these differences? What's happening here? Well, obviously, what's happening is that the chatzotzrots are mirroring the moment in which they're being blown and the necessary reaction or the understandable reaction to what's happening. If I'm in my camp and I'm settled and Moshe wants to talk to the elders, I'll blow a tekiah. If I want to bring the people together, I'll blow two trumpets. But what will I sound? I'll sound only a tekiah. Because everything's okay. We're set. There's no challenge at this point. The camp is sitting pretty. Along comes the time when we have to begin to challenge, to move. And how do we know where we have to move? Remember, by the cloud of glory and where it sets itself down, which means that I don't know where I'm going, and I don't know how long I'll be there. I don't know any of that. So what am I going to sound? A truah. I'm going to sound a broken sound. And when I come back and settle down again, tiska'u v'lo tariu, only a tekiah. So therefore, we're beginning to see that these are not only utilitarian, but they are at least reflective of the emotions and the feelings of Bnei Yisrael at particular moments, and the sounds will change based on those moments. Yes?
Why does it use the term utikaten?
Excellent question.
Why not itkaten?
Okay. Very good. I was going to mention it later, but let me just point it out. We'll look at it in a minute. It's very interesting that the Torah, when it discusses the truot in these sentences, does not use the verb that stems from the word trua. It should have been v'hare osem trua, right? It is utikatem trua. So we're going to have to see why that is. And if you take a look at the next page, you'll see that that's where it uses Vahareosem Trua. Okay, on page number 3. Ki savo milchama. So now we're moving now to another level. Until now, okay, they're utilitarian, and they are used to reflect the emotions of Klal Yisrael at particular moments of the journey. Yes?
Is the TORAH to tell them we're going to move, or is the TORAH to move?
The TORAH is telling them to move.
So that means they already knew how to get ready. You just can't.
I'm sorry.
Then they had to be prepared to move before the TORAH.
Oh, I see what you mean. In other words, do the preparations take place before the TORAH, or I would assume that the way it's expressed is that the TORAH is the announcement that you're going to leave. You're about to leave. And the Eastern camp, get ready right away and don't take time and just go. And the next, they don't have 2 suitcases or 3 suitcases, depending on how El wants to treat you. What? They have whatever they have, right? The TORAH is the announcement. You guys go. TORAH is the announcement. You guys go. All right, now we're going to see an additional level to the Chatzos. Ki savo milchama ba'artzechem. Al hatzar hatzorereschem. If you are involved and engaged in war, vahareosem b'chatzatzros, v'nizkartem lifnei Hashem Elokechem, v'noshatem me'oivechem. In the moment of war, what do I sound? Trua. Why? It's understandable. It's a time of tremendous challenge. It's a time of tremendous uncertainty. I don't know what's going to happen. My life is on the line. This is a trua. And it uses the language of Hareosem Trua there.
It doesn't say Vahareosem Trua.
What?
Before it said that Utkatem Trua, Utkatem Tzia.
Right.
It said Vahareosem. It doesn't say Vahareosem Trua.
Because it doesn't have to. Because it doesn't hear it, right? Because once you say Vahareosem, you are saying blow the broken sound. So it doesn't have to say Vahareosem Trua. It has to say Utkatem Trua. All right, so why? Right. So why does it say Utkatem? Turn back the page. All right, well actually, yeah, turn back the page. It'll be easier. For a moment. How often does it say Utkatem Trua? It says it twice. In the middle of the paragraph, Utkatem Trua Shenit. What do the rabbis say? Because the Torah uses the verb for tekiah in conjunction with the trua, that means that every trua you sound, except for the one that is Vahareosem Trua, has to be enveloped by tekiot. You have a tekiah before, and you have a tekiah after. And that's, by the way, one of the first steps in understanding why we blow the shofar the way we do. It's merging partially from here. There are other commentaries who say, other points of view who say it emerges elsewhere as well. In Yovel, where it says Vahavarta Shofar Trua, where it says that you cause a trua to pass, it does it twice. So that's the origin. But this is a very clear indication, according to Chazal, that every time you sound a trua, except for at war, what you sound is a tekiah before and a tekiah after. Next.
Tekiah, the generic verb for sounding the shofar, regardless of what sound.
Apparently not, right? V'tzivanu al tekiyat shofar l'shmoa, right? L'shmoa kol shofar.
But tekiah is a verb.
We use it, right? We use it. Tekiah is a noun. We use it. We use it as a verb sometimes and use it as a noun, and we call it tekiyat shofar, but the text doesn't call it that, right? Basically, in fact, what is the most important sound on Rosh Hashanah? The trua. Right? We'll get to that. All right, now, let's go back to that moment before we leave Har Sinai. We still haven't answered the question, although we're a little bit closer. Why is this the last commandment that HaKadosh Baruch Hu commands before we leave Har Sinai? Couldn't there have been other commandments of lofty nature that would be more important for us to think about as we begin this? It's the beginning of our national journey. Even though the beginning of our national journey was leaving Egypt, this is the beginning of our national journey once we're whole. Both Yetzias Mitzrayim and Matan Torah, we're going. I'd like to suggest the following. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is turning to Klal Yisrael and saying to them, everything is set. You're going to get the man, you're going to move according to my commandments, you're all ready to go. There's only one thing missing, and that's your spirit. The one thing missing is you. And what will I give you to mirror that spirit? And they will be used at all different kinds of times. The same Chatzos will celebrate with you on holidays and carry you through a war. This is the last commandment. I want you to understand, Kadosh Baruch Hu is saying, that only with your individual spirit and your unique spirit, each one of you, will our journey be whole. And what's critical here is a very interesting halacha that I think proves my point. Turn to the bottom of page number 3. On the middle of page number 3. All the way at the top, right, next to OU. All right? An exception. The rabbis say the following. The Torah, Hashem said to Moshe, Aseh lecho, make for yourself. He didn't just say Aseh. Should have been Aseh shtei chatzos. What's Aseh lecho? Say the rabbis, Lecho ata oseh, ve'ein ata oseh li'acher. Ata mishtamesh bohen, ve'ein acher mishtamesh bohen. You fashion it for yourself and for your generation. And guess what? You can't hand it down. The rabbis say this is the only symbol and utensil in the Mishkan or surrounding the camp which has to be generation specific. Moshe fashions, he cannot give his chatzos to Yoshua. Yoshua has to make his own. Why? I believe because it represents the spirit of those people and that generation. And every generation is going to meet different challenges, and every time is going to be different. And what Kadosh Baruch Hu is saying, you will each have to fashion your own chatzotrot. What does it mean? You will each have to discover your spirit, your soul, your spark. And understand that at the top of page 3, which we already looked at, not only is it reflecting my spirit, but it is also what? A reach to God. It's also a reach to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and a fundamental prayer. Because what does it say about the war? It says, V'harehosem, right? B'chatzosros, v'nizkartem, and you will be remembered, lifnei Hashem. When you sound the chatzotros and they reflect your soul and you really understand what's happening, that is a wordless prayer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. All right, so what do we have so far? We have 2 sounds within the Torah, associated not with the shofar, but associated with the chatzotros. We have TORAH and we have Tekiah. It is associated with one thing in the Torah text, and that is the blowing of the shofar at Yovel, which answers our next question. I may know now, at least partially, the sounds that I'm supposed to make on Rosh Hashanah, but how do I know I'm supposed to use a shofar? Maybe I'm supposed to use a bugle, a clarinet. Why is it that how do I know that I'm supposed to sound a shofar? So the rabbis will say, it comes from Yovel. Turn to the next page. Oh no, the bottom of page 3, I'm sorry. Same page. It says, V'havarto shofar trua, when it comes to Yovel. You're supposed to make a shofar trua pass through the land, right? And the rabbis say it says V'havarto, and then it says ta'aviru, so that it means, again, this is one of the other sources for Tkiya before and Tkiya after. I'm not going to get into it fully. But there's something else that's happening here. The shofar is being identified and associated with the trua. So now I know that what I sound is a shofar. And say the rabbis, how do I know? How do I know that not only do I sound the shofar on Yovel, which is clear in the text, that I also sound it on Rosh Hashanah? Because look at what it says. It says that you should sound the shofar the b'chodesh hashvi'i, and then it says on the 10th day Yom Kippur. So what then does that mean? It doesn't have to say chodesh hashvi'i. If it identifies the day on which it's going to be sounded as Yom Kippur, you don't need to say it's in the 7th month. Say the rabbis, what's that saying? That all the shofar sounds that are sounded in the 7th month have to be alike. And that's how you know that it's a shofar by Yovel, and it's also a shofar by Rosh Hashanah. Okay, turn the page. Now, at the top of page 4, we have, again, those two sentences that define or that associate Rosh Hashanah with Trua, right? We started with them. Yom Trua Yeh Lochem and Zichron Trua Mikra Kodesh. Right? So each of them associates Trua with this first day of the 7th month, which is what we call Rosh Hashanah. Torah doesn't call it Rosh Hashanah. We call it Rosh Hashanah. In fact, and like I said, that's another shiur. Torah doesn't even identify this as Rosh Hashanah. It doesn't. All the things that we think about and do and have in mind when it comes to Rosh Hashanah do not clearly emerge from the text. You have to look hard and you have to find the hints. But what's happening here? Now that I understand what a trua is, I can also understand why the Torah is identifying Rosh Hashanah as a Yom Trua and a Zichron Trua, as opposed to, why doesn't it tell me a holiday? Because Trua represents the broken sound, the anguish, the need to pray, the need to reach out, the uncertainty as we face another year. And therefore, when it says Yom Trua Yeh Lochem, it's not just saying it's a day when you should sound the Trua. What's it saying? It's a day which is exemplified by the Trua. It is a Yom Trua. And now that I know that the Trua focuses on that bent, anguished, uncertain sound, I can understand. Yom Trua and Zichron Trua, that's what the Torah is saying. The Torah is saying it's not just you're going to sound the Trua on that day. That day is a Yom Trua. It's a day of Trua, literally. Okay, so we got so far. What do we have so far? We have Tkiya, Trua, Tkiya, right? How do I end up with Shvarim? Where does that come from? Turn the page, at the bottom of the page. Okay, so the Torah says, Yom Trua Yeh Lochem, and Onkelos translates the word Trua, I think I told you, as Yabava, as an anguished sound. It's a broken sound, it's an anguished sound. But there was a difference of opinion among Chazal as to what that meant. Hey, don't be surprised, right? Right? We can't agree on anything. What is it that we are not agreeing about here? Is a Yabava, is a Trua, the sound of someone crying, or the sound of someone sighing? Which is it? And different customs developed within the people. Look, it says at the bottom of the page number 4, Mar savar genuche genach, umar savar yibelule yelil. One position took that the TORAH, which is spoken about in the Torah, is meant to be the sound of someone sighing. And the other said that TORAH is supposed to be the sound of someone crying. All right, so which is which? Think. Shvarim, what's that? That's the sound of someone sighing. Dum, dum, dum. Right? The TORAH, what we call the TORAH, is what? The sound of someone sobbing. Right? And therefore, what we are saying is that what we call a TORAH is not the total TORAH. In other words, the TORAH is a broken sound. Shvarim and TORAH are both different iterations of the biblical TORAH. Right? In other words, the biblical TORAH just says broken sound, and there are two iterations. One is it's sighing, and one is it's crying. Turn to the next page. Okay, now, how do I get to what we do? If there were two opinions, why don't we just take one of them and follow that? So the Talmud says at the top of page number 5, Iskin Rabbi Avohu b'Keisari. Rabbi Avohu in Caesarea made the mandate. Shlosha shvarim trua tekiah. Shlosha shvarim trua tekiah. He said, you have to sound both of them. What we're going to do is, I'm not happy, he says, that, someone's going to say, my shul, we do this, and your shul, yeah, you just do that. You just do a shvarim. We do a trua, right? I don't want that. I don't want that kind of division, says Rabbi Avo. So we are going to universalize how we sound. And Rabbi Avo says the following: we will sound a shvarim surrounded by tekiot. We will sound trua surrounded by kiot. And where does shvarim trua come from? We will sound sighing leading to crying, surrounded by shifit, but surrounded by tekiot. Why don't I sound the opposite? Why don't I want to do crying leading to sobbing? So the Gemara says that's not what happens. I'm sorry. We'll get to Aim Sisra. We're not up to her yet. Okay, thanks. All right, but why is it that I have to sound a shvarim trua, but I don't have to sound a trua shvarim? The Talmud says because sighing leads to crying. Crying doesn't lead to sighing. First you sigh, and then you cry. And therefore, what we have is, now think of the picture that's being painted for us here. What we're doing is we're understanding that when the Torah says to us, this is a day of the broken sound, it's saying that's the elemental sound, right? The tekios that sound around it are ancillary. This day is defined by trua, and trua means uncertainty. It's a prayer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu to have certainty. It's a recognition of the things that you're worried about, etc., etc. Okay, now, there's a very difficult question. There's a very difficult question that was raised apparently to Rav Hai Gaon, one of the primary Gaonim. The Goldin period is right after the close of the Talmud, pretty much right after the close of the Talmud. So what happened? Nishal l'Rav Hai Gaon. I'm looking at page number 5. V'chi ad sheba Rabbi Avo lo hayu Yisrael yotzin yedei tekiyah shofar. Hold on a minute. Are you telling me that from the time the commandment was given at Sinai until now, until your time, Rav Hai Gaon, one of the groups didn't do it right. Right? One of the groups didn't know. In other words, it's either a sigh or a cry. And how is it possible that the definition of TORAH, it means that for centuries we did it perhaps wrong, depending on which position you took. So along comes Rabbi Goldin, and he says something powerful. It's somewhat hard to fit it into the language of the Gemara, but he says the following: no, you got it wrong. The truth is that either one is acceptable. Why? Because the Torah just says a broken sound. Either a shvarim or a trua is acceptable. What was the takon of Rav Hai Gaon? Do them all, everywhere. In other words, it was totally motivated not by an attempt to arrive at the definition of trua. It was totally motivated to create unity within the community. And that was Rav Hai Gaon's answer to that question. All right, so again, we've come back. We have Tekiah, Trua, Tekiah, Tekiah, Shvarim, Tekiah, and Tekiah, Shvarim, Trua, Tekiah. Why do we then sound sets of three, right? So the rabbis explain that three emerges from the three mentions of Trua in the Torah. Twice by Rosh Hashanah, one by Yovel. So that's why we do sets of three. Right? First, so that's what we're doing. The first time we sound, what are we doing? We're doing Tekiah, Trua, Tekiah, and then three times. Tekiah, Shvarim, Trua, Tekiah, three times. And then Tekiah, Shvarim, Trua, three times to satisfy everybody. All right? Now, the fact is, however, that we blow a lot more than that, don't we? We're supposed to sound how many sounds? 100 sounds. Where does that come from? What? I'm sorry. It comes from Sisra's mother, who is Sisra? Sisra was an enemy, a general that led a huge attack on Klal Yisrael, the period of the Shoftim in Devorah's time. And what happens is the Bnei Yisrael win, and Sisra is running away, and he comes to the tent of Yael, and he goes in because he figures that she'll take care of him, and basically she kills him. Right? That's to make a long story short. And what the Torah says is that, and in the Navi, in Shiras Devorah, she describes Sisra looking out the window and crying or sighing, depending on what you say, emitting a yevava, all right? And according to Tosfot, she emitted 100 yevavot. And that's why we're to sound out. This is very strange, is it not? I mean, I'm defining what I'm going to do on Rosh Hashanah by the mother of Sisra, right? That I don't think that that's someone I should hold up to imitate. But nonetheless, what the Torah seems to be saying is, even when your enemies are in anguish, you should recognize that anguish. Right? That's a hard thing for us to think about now today with everything that's going on. And I'm not taking a political position. But basically what we need to understand is, bin fol oivecha al tismach. You're not supposed to rejoice over the death of your enemy. You're supposed to accept it as a necessary event, and you're supposed to recognize that anguish is universal, and even Sisra has something to teach me in that regard. Okay, you had your hand up first.
I thought we went from 90 to 100 because because the sister's mother. That's what my understanding is we went from 90 to 100 for the sister's mother. How did we get from 30 to 90?
All right. Now, the question he raises is we get from 90 to 100 for sister's mother. How did we get to the original 90? Well, we sound the shofar twice, in a third time to get up to 100. The two times we sound it are what we call the tkios miyushav, the sitting tkio, and the ones that are associated with the amida of Musaf, the malchios, zichronos, and shofros. All right, so I'm not good. Math was my worst subject, so I'm not going to tell you that that brings us up to 90, but it brings us close. What? Sorry? Yeah, each one 3 times. Correct.
10 times 6 is 30.
I'm sorry, what?
10 times 6 is
Oh,
30.
thank you very much. Okay, 10 times 6 is 30. All right, we're good. We're good. All right. Shh. All right, it's 90. I mean, it's 90. Yes.
Is there a machlokas about whether Shvarim Shmuel is considered one sound or two sounds?
There is a machloket as to how the Shvarim Trua should be sounded. Should it be sounded as one sound or two? And that's why the prevalent custom is that the first tikiyot feature a Shvarim Trua in one breath. In other words, it's one sound. And the second tikiyot, the Baal Tekeah is supposed to take a very short breath between the Shvarim and the Trua.
Doesn't that affect the counting?
What?
Doesn't that affect the counting?
Doesn't affect the counting. Right. Yes.
In terms of why we are connecting the Skias Shofar to Ein Sisra, I heard another interpretation
Okay.
would be helpful for us, because Ein Sisra didn't mean a word she said, and the crime proved it. She was saying, "Oh, why is my son coming back? Oh, he's getting so many prisoners. He's getting so many women that he's raping. He's getting all this great stuff, and that's why he's not coming back." And she didn't believe it,
Right.
because she was crying.
Uh-huh.
If she believed the reason he was coming back was because he was so victorious, why would she cry?
Okay, good.
The fact that she's crying means she doesn't believe what she said. And the question is, on Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, do we believe anything that we're saying?
Very nice. All right. It's a challenge.
Say, on Shaman, do we believe any of it? The Shkia Shofar is saying, don't be like Ein Sisra.
Interesting. Okay, excellent thought. All right, now, I've left out, now I think we've accomplished basically what we need to accomplish, which is we've attached the shofar to the sounding, we've attached the sounding to Rosh Hashanah, we've defined Tkiya, Trua, Shvarim, etc. Now I left one thing out, didn't I? Where else does this shofar appear in Jewish tradition? At the Akedah, and also at Revelation, also at Har Sinai. But at the Akedah, what happens at the Akedah? Avram offers the ram, and the ram, therefore, the ram's form, then becomes our shofar. So what we're saying is that it traces back to the Akedah, right? No. We are saying that it traces back to the moment following the Akedah. If you look at the text carefully, Hashem appears, or a Malach appears to Avram and says, don't sacrifice, or don't offer, stop, stay your hand. Hashem then makes a promise to him. What does Avraham then do? He sees this ram stuck in a thicket. He therefore goes and offers it to a Kodesh Baruch Hu. Now let's wait a minute. If you were Avraham, and you were standing at the summit of Har Moriah, and you were just stopped from doing the Akedah, I think I would turn to a Kodesh Baruch Hu and say, hey, I've done enough, right? Look at what I've accomplished. Look at me. Look at what I was willing to do. What does Avram do? He takes the next step. That's what we're remembering. We're remembering that the next step has to be taken, and that therefore, and here, okay, we're moving into drush. Until now we were dealing with halacha. Now these are some thoughts that I'm sharing with you about the shofar that perhaps you can think about. Yes.
There are two thorns on a ram. So the smaller one is used at Har Sinai, and the other one is put away. The larger one of the ram's horn was put away for the Most HaMashiach. So when you talk about the Shofar, it says et ha'ayil. If you change around the words at ha'ayil, you get Aleph Lamed Yud A, which is Eliyahu. Yeah. So basically, you're reminding us that Hashem is reminding us there will come a time when Eliyahu will come, the time of the Mashiach, and you'll have the larger shofar.
I can always count on you to give us one little piece, all right? Which is very nice. Very nice. Okay, beautiful. Beautiful. What might be symbolized by the way we sound the shofar, though? Why must the TORAH be surrounded by tekiot? What does that symbolize? What does that come from? So what would you say? Anything you say won't be wrong, because what?
After it's fallen apart.
Right. Good. Well, it's an on the surface, one explanation is that it is an optimistic. Right? What I'm saying is, if I blow only the TORAH, then all I'm saying is things are going to be bad, or things are bad. If I'm blowing the tekiot before and after, then I'm basically saying, HaKadosh Baruch Hu will take care of me, it'll be okay. And therefore, that's the surface level of understanding. Yes?
Also, the tekiah, isn't it also supposed to remind us that Yom Harat Olam, Shoshana, the day when man was created, what did Hashem do? He blew into it. And that is...
Okay, you're doubling in the contribution.
In this one long breath.
Very nice, very nice. Again, these are beautiful interpretations. Okay, I'd like to suggest another reason, or another image, perhaps, we should think about when we talk about why we sound tekiot around the TORAH. What? Yes, right, same thing, right, same idea. We're surrounding the din with rachamim, right? That's our prayer. And by the way, I should say, and then underline it, just like the chatzotzros were not just an indication of where I am, but a prayer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the chatzotzros were a mechanism of prayer. Tekiah the shofar is a mechanism of prayer. It's a mechanism of wordless prayer. But I'd like to suggest that the set of three, tekiah, TORAH, tekiah, actually speaks to the way in which we view history and the passage of time, and how different it is from the world around us. To the world around us, the one thing that is certain is the present. That's really all that matters, right? The one thing that is certain is the present. The past, it's a dim memory. The future, who knows what? To the Jew, the opposite is true. The opposite is true. The past is as clear as a shofar sounding the tekiah at Har Sinai. The future is as clear as a shofar sounding the tekiah at Yemos HaMashiach. What is uncertain? Me. What's uncertain is now, right? And therefore, this is something I thought of years ago, and then I saw it written somewhere as well, but I don't remember where. That's another possibility, or another thing to think about when you hear the shofar, which is that what is it? What am I saying? I'm saying, Kadosh Baruch Hu, everything's in your hands except what? My yiras shamayim. Right? The past is clear, future is clear, we're going somewhere, but nonetheless, what's uncertain? My time and my contribution. And therefore, what is our challenge? To turn our personal truot into tekiot, uniting the tekiah of past and future. And if we are successful in doing that, then HaKadosh Baruch Hu promises us we'll have a good year, better year, Be'ezras Hashem, a year of peace, Be'ezras Hashem, and no more anguish.